Welcome, everyone, to UnSpun episode number 23. And my name is Jan Irvin, and this is Joe Atwill. Today, we're going to be discussing the divine marriage and the sacred masculine and feminine. And we're going to be covering a lot of issues. We had a lot of great feedback over the last show that we did on family a couple of weeks ago. I received a number of emails. Joe, did you get a number of emails too on that show?
Actually, quite a few, and they were all very positive. Gratifying to see that, the topic was something that was really reaching people, that they were interested in it, and they saw some of the discussions relevant to their own lives.
What I wanted to get into regarding this episode is basically all of the things that have been inserted or injected into our culture that prevent essentially the divine marriage, and things like pornography or outside energy corrupting the essential relationship, like we talked about on the previous family episode, exes and things like this, all of the outside things that come in to break up a relationship, whereas maybe 50 or 100 years ago and previous to that, you didn't have all of these external sources of distortion, essentially, and disruption into the average relationship. This is all a new phenomenon with the internet and with broadcast media, with the pop culture and the music and all of these things. We're hypersexualized. All of the pornography throughout the internet has caused a major problem within relationships. And in fact, I have a list in front of me of the 10 things that pornography alone causes problems with. And it causes problems with getting aroused with your spouse. It wrecks your libido. It makes you sexually lazy. It turns making love into a foreign concept. Makes regular intercourse seem boring. And makes it hard to be tender when you have sex. You have to have immediate gratification and have a difficult time lasting long. Gives you a warped view of what attractive is, and makes sex seem like too much work and causes selfishness. And I mentioned having Gary Wilson on my show a couple of times on Gnostic Media, which can be found in the Gnostic Media archives there, about all of the issues related with pornography alone. And all of this stuff goes to create a distraction or an attack essentially on the family. It's the battle for the mind and all of the things that fall under that. And, so sex, destruction of the family, all of these things go into that. So essentially, I wanted to focus tonight on the divine marriage and the problems that cause it, and possibly solutions that people can do to create stable, long-lasting relationships and possibly fix those relationships that they're in.
Right. Well, we have a real problem. I call it the heterosexual problem. And the problem is that the media has it in mind to break apart the components of the family, and that starts with heterosexual monogamy. And so, of course, pornography is a neurolinguistic programming that makes particularly males have a hard time having sex with real people, real women. And you look at all of these elements that Jan listed, and they're all to some extent centered within our media. And so that's why the statement that Elijah Wood made yesterday is important, because it tells exactly what is inside the media. And Wood came out with a statement in which he said that, Hollywood has a pedophile problem. And he said that there are vipers preying on children in the business. And he said that clearly something major was going on in Hollywood. It was all organized. There are a lot of vipers in the industry. All right, so that's pretty specific and damning. And I'm going to say that nothing is going to happen. That even though you would think that in Hollywood and in areas that the media is infesting with their studios and agencies and parties and however else they carry on, you'd think that the police in these areas would have their ears perk up when they heard this and would attempt an investigation. But it isn't going to happen because the media is fused with the government. It's just one big cesspool. So nothing will happen. And Elijah Wood was courageous to bring out the information, but unfortunately, the structure is not going to change. And so Jan used the expression, the sacred masculine and feminine. And I really like this expression. And I also like Jan using the expression, the divine marriage. In my opinion, the religion of sane people, of healthy people, was destroyed. And really, what did it consist of? Well, it basically made sacred reason and ourselves. You see, the spirituality that is given away with political correctness, with Christianity, with the Abrahamic traditions. These are all just ways to control people. And what was taken was a sense of spirituality relating to ourselves, to our ability to think, to our ability to have rational discourse, and a sense of spirituality about how our natural process worked. So it was
essentially, Joe, what you're saying, it would be like saying that grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and then within the trivium to find truth, get subverted into Father, Son, Holy Ghost, and then God.
Exactly. And so the senses get taken away and replaced by an arbitrator of reality, a priest. But worse than this is that sophisticated political organizations and things that are controlling us, for example, the relationship between the media and the government, can use quasi-religious kind of elements like political correctness to basically insert elements right into our mind that destroy the ability to have the natural religion. The natural religion, which is just the trivium plus a self-esteem, but not just a self-esteem in a sense that the way we are is sacred.
Well, it not only that, but the trivium itself provides that self-esteem.
Exactly right. And so this has been taken away from us. And when we use terms like divine marriage and the sacred masculine and sacred feminine, it's very beneficial. It helps our mind clear up, right? Because, we've been looking at the Kardashians and Bruce Jenner's transformation, and these things are being given to us as, kind of
this is right. This is the new great sexuality to have, and we should appreciate this. And, whereas the Bible has... and if you look at the Bible story, it's about Sodom and Gomorrah and the destruction of this culture essentially by God, with this action. What we see happening is transgender and gay rights actually being imposed against the rest of society, even though they're the minority. And then, for instance, on legal documents now in many places, instead of father and mother, it says parent one and parent two.
Right,
like this.
Yeah.
So they're trying to eliminate the very foundation of what is family and what is recognized as family. And then a gay couple can adopt, or they can hire a woman to have a child, and then they're considered the parents, even though without science or without some outside help, they can't create this family naturally.
Right.
And, and it's not to attack people's freedom, but what we're trying to do is discuss the sacred marriage itself here. So let us go through all of this before people get upset at us here.
Right. Well, I want to just point out that, like, people will say, well, this is an attack on transgender people or gay people, right? That we're attacking them when we set up the heterosexual marriage in a religious context, right? Well, unfortunately, we're not. What we're pointing out is that everything can be weaponized, and feminism can be weaponized, homosexuality can be weaponized. All of these things can be weaponized by clever oligarchs who understand the psychology and anthropology, and are intent on taking the population into basically a group that doesn't have any connections whatsoever. Because, Jan, culture moves slowly, but it does move. You can see the direction that it moves in when you look over a period of time. And if you look from 1950 through to the Kardashians and Bruce Jenner, clearly we're headed in a direction. So then imagine in 50 years from this day where we will be. Imagine right. Bruce Jenner had been 50 years back. Well, where we will be is in an area where there is no sexuality whatsoever, because male and female will have been done away with.
Right. And I do want to get into that in the whole creation of this androgynous thing. But what I want to do first is, go into essentially what becomes devotion by women and honor by men, and how this interaction between men and women takes place, in the foundation itself of a relationship. Excuse me. And, another thing that goes in to break this apart is things like polyamory, where because of all of these outside influences, the New Age books, the propaganda from the media and the music, and if you out there today, if you're not into polyamory or having multiple partners and all of this stuff, you're considered a prude, and it doesn't matter if you've gone through all of that and you're older and you see through it now, or whatever the case may be, you get attacked for this stuff. But, polyamory essentially, instead of focusing on the family unit itself and growing and building that, again, we're focused outside on having multiple partners or whatever, which, and I've seen this in married couples, and it does, who are quote unquote polyamorous, or one of the two is usually polyamorous. And often what I see, and other people have told me they see it in the men, but generally the relationships that I see are women who are polyamorous and the guy is dedicated. I know some people will argue that and say it's the other way around. Probably not a broad enough pool to pull from there on what the stats are on that. But this whole thing disrupts our devotion and honor toward each other within a relationship. And again, it keeps our focus constantly on the outside. And I think that if people held their space, if a couple held their space sacred between each other, that this, outside energy would automatically not be there, because when that energy is focused between each other and that space is kept sacred between each other, then that's when I think the true divine marriage, so to speak, really takes place.
Right. It's hard to have that kind of feeling inside of a perverted culture, because the culture is so instrumental in creating the energy of sensation of that the relationship is sacred. You just look at our favorite whore of Babylon, Miley Cyrus. She says that one week she is heterosexual and the next week she is homosexual. Right. She changes like a couple times a month. So this is the role model. And it's not accidental. I mean, the creation of Miley Cyrus was weaponized anthropology. I think it's obvious. I think it's just transparent. But how does a couple, navigate through the cesspool of our culture? And if it was only a cesspool, that would be great. The problem is it's through the clever weaponized anthropology that is embedded in our culture. It is really hard for couples to not be perverted by these elements that you're listing. And I'll tell you, listing them like you have, and we're going to do, is a really valuable thing, because just having a referent, just having, basically just being able to talk about pornography as a destructive element is very, very valuable. And I'll go so far, Jan, as to say, look, if in your relationship, if inside your heterosexual relationship, you can't talk about pornography as a destructive element, then there's something wrong in terms of the level of intimacy that the relationship is functioning at. It really should be obvious to anyone who thinks clearly, that pornography really is something that should not be part of a relationship between men and women. It puts too much pressure on the woman, right? And it takes too much, and it's too distracting to the male. It's just a very negative thing. So when couples can talk about it, when they can use the idea of pornography as weaponized anthropology, I just think this really helps clarify. It gets the discussion going in the right direction. And then when you talk about polyamory, and of course the different ways that male and female function inside a relationship, I mean, just bear in mind that there is different roles, and women can have one child per year. Men can have hundreds. So there are different forces, evolutionary forces inside of us, but these will be, basically transcended once the commitment to the relationship, brings reason into defending the relationship.
I'm going to interject something there, Joe. You say that men can have hundreds. I mean, technically we are capable of having hundreds, but in a heterosexual relationship, women are typically very selective in their partners to get the best, strongest mate. And a heterosexual male has far less partners a year typically than, say, would a homosexual male.
Absolutely.
Who would go into a nightclub or one of these bath houses and then potentially have sex with 50 or 100 people in a night,
Right. And that's exactly right. And so I'm just going to say that that we want to bring awareness of the way that women need to select males. You mentioned that females will pick, males for different attributes. Well, one of the things that they should be looking for is faithfulness and monogamy. This is something that women need to, bring into the selection process. And it's going to be hard to bring that to a male who is infested in his soul with pornography, right? But that's just something we have to do. We have to get, those people who really want to create real relationships and create a real future for us, for our culture, for our people. You have to go through this process of exchanging the information between the two of you that you need to understand what you're up against. You see, you can't avoid pornography. You can't avoid polyamory. You can't avoid the way that feminism is working against women. I mean, these things are in our culture. They're embedded. So the people that want to get away from these attacks, to avoid them, they have to have an understanding of what they are.
You have to have an awareness of that. And I wanted to say thanks to Michael, if you're watching, for the donation there. I really appreciate that. And so a minute ago, you mentioned the traditional role of men and women, and I wanted to go into that a bit. And for the most part, what I've been piecing together just as I analyze this through the trivium over the last couple of months is that, and again, there are exceptions. There were some cultures that were vegetarian and stuff, and how well they survived and how much fat, et cetera, they got is a different matter. But traditionally, cultures were hunter-gatherers, or the women would grow the food locally near the hut. That doesn't mean to say there weren't exceptions of the men helping the women and doing that, but and generally the men went out and hunted and brought in big game. And the obvious reason for that is because men are larger and stronger and don't have a womb, whereas women are typically smaller and weaker, with some exceptions, and do have a womb. And so they would tend, if they were pregnant or raising children, they would need to be closer to the home. So there might be a few men that would help protect the women or whatever. But these are the traditional roles that men and women have played. And traditionally, because of this, because the men bringing the fat and protein in, and then the women bringing the fruits and vegetables and maybe smaller game that were more local, or chickens and things like that. This, in my opinion, is what essentially the relationship between the man and the woman is what actually creates what is essentially the balanced diet, because you have the men bringing in the game from the hunt and the women bringing in, the stuff from the garden, et cetera. So then you have this balance and this synergy between the two that works. The men need the fiber, the women need the protein and fat for the children. So you get this, synergy that works between the two. And what we see happening through the reculturalization of society, through SRI and the CIA and MK Ultra and all of this stuff, is, and it's happening to women too. And I've done shows with Curtis Duncan on this, the feminization of men and the masculinization of women. But what we see is men being taken completely out of the traditional roles. So they're being emasculated. Hunting is bad. Being able to protect yourself or your spouse is bad. Arming yourself is bad. And being able to strictly defend yourself, all of this stuff is bad. For women, the opposite has happened. The ultimate, what in my opinion is the women's ultimate symbol of for femininity, their ability to bring life into the world, is then diminished, and then they should go into the man's world, quote unquote, and don't get upset at me, I'm just talking about the traditional roles, and then go into the business world, forget the family, forget the larger family, forget about children, and then focus on this business world. Now, typically, traditionally, because the women were nurturing children and things like this, they had a role that was at home, and then the men went out and battled the world to bring the supplies in for the women. And it wasn't, a lot of, Gloria Steinem, et cetera, she's spun this, and Gloria Steinem, and I've quoted this quote a number of times, she was a CIA agent. As the former director of Central Intelligence said, I might quote Miss Gloria Steinem, one of those so assisted, who commented that the CIA wanted to do what we wanted to do, present a healthy, diverse view of the United States. I never felt I was being dictated to at all, she said. And of course, this is their spin on this healthy, diverse view. But what it is really it's an attack on the family and everything. So the CIA.
I just wanted to comment that is really funny, Jan, because that is literally in the same era as MK Ultra.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really diverse. So.
What I was getting at there, though, is that they sell this image that the role that women played was slavery and that men were dominant. And you hear often, well, women, they didn't get to go to college. Okay, well, men often had to go to war and didn't get to live. So there was a give and take there. I mean, the women got on the lifeboats with the children. The men died with the ship. So, if it's a male-dominated culture per se, then why are the women protected first and foremost over the men? Wouldn't the men protect themselves over the women?
Yeah, this came out of, just historically, this comes out of the Frankfurt School in critical theory, where, the cultural Marxists, in quote, wanted to simply destroy the European culture. And so they basically just learned how to apply criticism against everything, right? Anything that was traditional could be attacked. And so the version of feminism that was brought forward was one which just, claimed that the woman's role, the natural role, was that of a victim, and that that in a healthy world, these kinds of relationships, which were basically just heterosexual marriages, these things wouldn't exist. So when you have to really know the source. It's important that people understand weaponized anthropology. I really don't think you can go around this world. You can't function sanely in the United States if you don't understand it. And so the first thing you have to do when you look at something like feminism and the attacks against males, right, against the male-dominated culture and business and things, is who is making the attack?
And what are these so-called claims of the male-dominated patriarchal culture based on?
Exactly. And that's why Karen
Strauen, right? Girl writes what?
I'm a huge fan of hers, and I think she just brings out really excellent points, which basically show that feminism isn't just wrong. It was a weapon. It was just created with with principles that came out of nowhere, that are just part of the Frankfurt School's effort to destroy European culture, that had a lot of bogus statistics and pompous, bombast that they were used against the traditional male structure. The males were really just characterized in an unfair way, and in an irrational way, and because they controlled the media. And this goes back to the statement by Elijah Wood yesterday. Because the media was controlled, and was promoting the weaponized anthropology of the early feminists, they got away with it. They were really able to sabotage the concept of the middle class dad as being someone who is evil. And I just
or stupid, like married with children and all of this
right.
stuff.
And I was just going to say, name one really outstanding European middle class dad in the media. Is it Homer Simpson?
Right, exactly.
I mean, who do we have, right?
So what we have is this replacement of the competent male, the provider, the protector, is this incompetent, neurotic. He's just trying to enslave his woman. And it's not to say that there aren't some occasions where this didn't happen. It's not to say that there weren't some cultures where this is predominant, but the role of provider, protector, going out to get the meat, get the money, fight the evil outside, all of this has been suppressed into this, and turned into this bumbling fool, or emasculated, turned into the metrosexuals that you see out there today that are so entirely effeminate. And
I'm just going to get one really
okay.
Let me just give one real simple example that people can follow. It's real simple. This character, Joyce Glassman. All right, so she was an editor of the article that appeared in Ms. Magazine, Gloria Steinem and CIA Agents magazine, called Black Macho. And Black Macho was actually an excerpt from a book by a woman named Michelle Wallace, who then later admitted that Joyce Glassman had basically breastfed the book to her. That's her expression, right? Now, this book characterized the black male in a very violent and negative light. And this was at the exact time that the Great Society programs that LBJ had created were starting to bear malicious fruit. In other words, the African-American family had been improving in every demographic statistics from the Civil War up until the exact point that LBJ pulled the plug on the Great Society programs. These are the programs that gave money to black women if they did not have a man in the house, right? So they were designed like a rifle shot against the black family. And when the numbers started to appear that, wait a second, everything had been going in the right direction, and now it's as if there's been a U-turn, suddenly you have black macho appear, and it got a huge media exposure. And Joyce Glassman was in back of it, right? She worked with the CIA agent Gloria Steinem.
Right, and that's, for those who don't know, Joyce Glassman is Daniel Pinchbeck's mother,
right?
Who promoted the whole 2012 end of the world nonsense. And Joyce Glassman worked with Allen Ginsberg. She was lovers to Jack Kerouac, and also worked with William Burroughs. And they were the essentially the Greenwich Village team of MK Ultra.
Right, and so you've got a very easy to follow trajectory. Everybody who listens to us can do this research. Research Joyce Glassman and Gloria Steinem, see the CIA connection, see the demographic reversal of the black family once the Great Society programs struck, and then look at Joyce Glassman's breastfed article and how it affected the ability of the African American culture to prevent it from going on.
Right, and then what you had, Joe, hold on, is you have the corruption of the inner city. You have boys being raised by mothers, and then they don't understand manhood. They don't have an outlet, and so this bursts out into gang violence and drugs and all of this kind of stuff, which wiped out the inner cities. And now what they've done is essentially they've transposed this onto the rest of society. It was basically a test project on the black community, and now they're using it against everybody.
Well, they want to integrate. Remember, Bernays was the one who created the NAACP, I think it was. It was, yeah.
I think he was involved in it.
Right. He was at the origins. And if you look at Bernays, the arch criminal, at where he is at the origins of the different thing. I mean, in this case,
he was behind it. Yes, you're right.
Okay. All right. So if you look at him with Damaged Goods, the sexualized play that created Sex O'Clock in America, according to the New York Times. So Bernays is an arch criminal, a propagandist, and he is setting the basis, the form that you can now plug Gloria Steinem and Glassman into, right? So this is just this mechanical process that people who actually were willing to do the research. I would mention the article that Jan and I wrote called "Manufacturing the Deadhead," which doesn't go into Steinem and Glassman, but does give you a good idea about what lay behind them, and you see the systematic. Way that integration, which of course is so hard to talk against, because when they say, well, you're a racist, it's just, you don't want integration. That isn't the question. The question is, was it weaponized?
Absolutely.
Was it weaponized? And then
what is the purpose of that weaponization?
What is the purpose? Because what was the purpose of it? To create the Great Society programs, to destroy the family, and then to push the middle class into a culture that had been debased. So that's why I would just say look at this whole trajectory from Bernays to LBJ, and then to Glassman's participation with Michelle Wallace's Black Macho. It's really not a very hard trajectory to follow.
Now, I want to go back onto the diet and nutrition information for a minute here, because I was talking about hunter-gatherer, et cetera, the gardening, all of that, and the combination of this. And what we see now is the heavy promotion of veganism and vegetarianism. And many people may not know that the brain is about 77% cholesterol, and essentially in a state of ketosis burns on saturated fats. And of course, there's a state of glycolysis, which I have played with back and forth between the two. And ketosis is a much higher state of performance when your body is basically trained to run on fats rather than sugars. And with veganism and vegetarianism, again, what we see is that men are, afraid to go out for the hunt and the kill. They're being feminized. They're getting their food out of a wrapper. They're going to the garden for their food. The traditional roles of men of provide and protect, and obviously the hunting aspect goes directly into the protection aspect, and then from there into can go into warfare. And of course, warfare isn't necessarily good, but let's say you're a tribe and you have women and children and they're starving, and you might go loot another tribe, or you might go hunt something to bring that in. So this this was just the facts of reality itself. But vegetarianism has removed not only the male's aspect of providing that, but it's also removed the protection aspect, and then it further emasculates them by creating this whole vegetarian level where then the men are just solely subsisting off of the essentially what was the women's role. And so, and again, I know these are hot buttons for everybody, but just try to understand them in context of what I'm getting at here. If we remove these traditional roles between men and women, what we end up with is this very unbalanced diet. And we can go back to Plato's Republic, where he talks about using vegetarianism to control the masses. Now, what people don't understand is that the brain and reproductive systems are both made up of cholesterol. So now, why for the last 50 years, 60, 70 years in the media have they been promoting this low-fat, low-cholesterol diet? We see all of the promotion of testosterone supplements, drugs in the media these days. Well, the answer to that, men, is to eat more cholesterol, and for women as well, because the low testosterone is caused by your lack of eating fats and cholesterol. Eating fat doesn't make you fat. Eating grains makes you fat. Eating a lot of carbs and sugars makes you fat. If you have weight problems, ladies and gentlemen, stop eating all the grains. It's not the meat. It's not the men's problem. This is part of the propaganda that they've used to not only emasculate the men, but to keep us unhealthy and keep us in the medical system at the same time. So they've broken apart this male-female balance of nutrition, insert a bunch of junk food and grains and a low-fat diet that emasculates the men, and then, say that it's the men that have caused all the problem. I mean, we're not the ones doing this. I'm not going around suppressing any women. Maybe there are some men out there who do that. There are psychopathic women out there that do it as well. But the feminism thing, it makes this broad, sweeping generalization against men. It emasculates the men. It breaks the culture. And the ultimate purpose of that, when this balance between men and women is broken, when the balance of family is broken, and especially extended family, then what happens is when we grow older, the only thing left for subsistence is reliance upon the state. And so then, it becomes a complete socialist structure. So this is the machinations that we see going on now and the direction that they're steering the culture right now.
Right. And I would also point out that the diet has been designed to prevent rebellion. It of course works against the family by emasculating the males. If you look at the European
and people, and they're told this is a good thing, that men are more docile if they're on a vegetarian diet, but
and they tell
docile towards whom and unprotective towards whom? How is that a good thing?
Right. It's not a good thing if you're being attacked. It's not a good thing if you're being genocided. You really don't want the males to be navel gazing and lacking the testosterone of anger and defense, right? that's just not a good thing when you're being attacked. And it's hard to see because there's just so much blurriness, to culture. But the diet is part of the attack. It's part of it. It is designed to leave people numb and without the capacity. I actually wonder, there's all this speculation about what's the purpose behind chemtrails, and I've often wondered about this, about whether or not it's just part of the numbing down. My sister lives in London, or excuse me, in England, and there's just this incredible, kind of dictatorship that's being very overt, cameras everywhere, militarized police. And I asked her, I said, what are the population? And she just said they're numb. It's as if they don't have the capacity to rebel.
Well, Joe, what did in World War II in England, they went around and they took all the farm animals and all the eggs and all the protein and all the pork and everything, chickens and everything, and then to supply the soldiers in the field, and then they created margarine as a supplement for the fats, quote unquote, for the women, right?
Yeah. So that was I think it's malfeasance. I think they knew exactly what they were doing. All of the synthetic oils have to be avoided. I mean, there's just two things. It's
vegetable oils in general.
Yeah, vegetable oils in general. All of the synthetic oils. Anything that isn't just made right out of the plant, just forget about. But there's just two things. A natural diet. We're omnivores, so make sure there's tons of meat and fat in it. And organic. You can't let any of these poisons into your body. All of the herbicides and the insecticides and the steroids and the hormones. I mean, just stay away from all of that. So the only thing that really matters is the label organic. And I know that there are criticisms of the term because what does it really mean? In some cases, there's difference. But look, start there. Just make sure you don't eat any of the chemical poisons.
Well, and the processed foods, at minimum, at least buy your food around the outside of the store and stay out of the aisles in the middle where all of the processed junk food are, where it's loaded with soy and wheat and GMO corn syrup and all of this kind of garbage, right?
So guess what I'm drinking here, Jan?
What, coffee?
No, I drink coffee in the morning. This is cacao, organic cacao from Costa Rica, and chaga, which is an herb that comes from Canada. It's mixed into a tea. And I mean, this is just, my little contribution to a healthy diet. I mean, it's sort of like...
just don't get too much phytic acid from the cacao.
Yeah, well, I only drink it like once a week. It's very powerful, cacao. Yeah. It's actually, and so, yeah, I drink it once a week, but it has just so many things in it that are beneficial. One thing we don't get with synthetic diets, I mean, as long as we're on it, is just we don't get the basic minerals, the irons, the magnesium, all of these things. It's so hard to get when you're eating synthetically. And so it's nice, I think, to have something like cacao that has so many of them in there that are bioaccessible. But you're absolutely right. You have to be careful with all of these things. Diet's a tough thing to do right. I don't think I do a real good job on it, but listening to you talk, I am inspired, Jan, and I will try to do better in the future.
What I want to do is get back to the hunter-gatherer aspect for a minute, because I want to get into something that's a little bit primal that I've noticed. I've been hunting a few times in my life, and I've gone out and hunted like a Christmas dinner and brought it back like duck or something like that. When I was 14, I hunted deer. But one thing that I've noticed, when all of these levels of propaganda and social conditioning are, the weaponized anthropology are lifted off of people, there's something primal in women when they see the men bringing back the food that gets them excited.
Well, they feel like they're
hold on, and there's another. Well, and there's another aspect to that. When the women take what the men bring in and then turn that and nurture the men and the children with it and themselves, the men get excited. So again, there's this, this cyclical relationship between the men and the women. And if you watch these videos on YouTube of the Kalahari desert hunters, they'll go out and they'll get these big game, and before they go out for the hunt, they're losing the hair. The children are losing hair, and then they get this big game and they bring it back. The women are all excited. They're proud. The men have done their job. Their health increases. Their hair stops falling out. All of this stuff. When you're entirely deficient of fats and protein, especially saturated fat, this is the consequence of it. You're losing hair and all of this stuff. And obviously this doesn't have to do with like when you're older anyway, when it happens. I'm talking about like just patches of hair and stuff falling out. But there is another element there between men and women. And in today's society, you could transpose that onto, men bringing home the bacon or, providing, and women who don't mind cooking the meal, etc. And of course, I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh no, but this is suppressive," and what? I don't want to be in the kitchen, or I don't want to be in the workplace, or vice versa. And today we have these men who are stay-at-home moms, I guess, and then they're in the kitchen. But these relationships usually break up after about 6 or 7 years because the man is not the provider. And the women get tired of this and then go out to find a more alpha type male. So there is something that transposes from this ancient view and the more traditional view, say 50 or 100 years ago, into the modern culture where we see these newer type marriages where the woman is the provider and the man is somehow the nurturer, where we see a very short term, a short lifespan for these types of relationships.
Right. And I think that it's unlikely we're going to go back to hunting as, having any significant fraction of the food production. This is unlikely, but I think that understanding these basic, kind of personality structures in a
primal instincts, human instincts, I think,
and finding ways to keep them animated in the relationship.
Right. Even if you're not going out and hunting, find another way that manifests, in the more traditional roles, so that so that it sort of keeps the bond in our relationship. And again, that goes back to keeping out that outside energy and going to look for other, and these books coming out these days where a relationship will only last 4 or 5 years because that's the limit of attraction and stuff. When I was a kid, people stayed married for 50, 60 years, and that's very rare now. I mean, you've been married for over 30 years. I've been married, and I'm not married now, so that didn't work out for me.
Well, there it is.
The weaponized anthropology.
Yep, that's right. And I would say, as an example of what a family can be, just get the TV shows from the 1950s, in case anyone has forgotten, like what culture could be. And you can see that the father's role was, fully mature, and he had power, and there was something, divine or had
compared to the married with children father, 30, 40 years later, where he's a totally degenerate.
And the families all function normally, even though these were, unreal Hollywood type situations. Sure. They were just they were just reflecting what was being experienced in the world. That just doesn't exist anymore. There's the attack against the European father has been completely successful. And the African American,
and next, I guarantee you they'll be going after the Latino families. Like in South America.
Absolutely, there already are. So,
yeah.
So you had written in when we were exchanging notes, and you did some bullet points on this. You had mentioned that there is this question of how do we find someone in this brave new world.
Well, before we get into that, though, I wanted to get into, Joe, how all of this attack on the male and female is manifesting in culture today. with this androgynous type person like Bruce Jenner, Bruce Gender, as I like to call him, where this, it's the man and woman are becoming one, and we see the promotion of this and Robert Anton Wilson's crap and the SRI crap and the Burning Man crap, where they're promoting this idea of transgender, of the
transhumanism.
We see Anton LaVey, the Church of Satan people, them doing this transgender and having surgery to look like their partners, et cetera, where they get breasts implanted and this sort of stuff. So to them, what they're doing is they're essentially the anti-life, where they're, whereas, I hate to use the word God, but that's the best term I can think of, where, because obviously LaVey is a Satanist, so it would be the opposite of God. But what these guys are doing is they take the opposite of what life is and then try to, in one sense, manufacture it, control it, transgender it. Life comes out of a test tube where the government has control of life, has the patents on all the seeds. So life itself is controlled, patented, and you have this unisex androgynous figure that manifests. And then we also see that manifesting in things like transhumanism, where where the whole thing is about destroying the sacred masculine and feminine, and to create this androgynous, essentially tech monster to control all of this stuff. So they're breaking down. They're attacking directly all life itself, and then creating something that would never exist without science, and then calling this some sort of evolution. Well, all of these people that get into homosexuality, this type of behavior, you're not building a family, you're not typically having children. I mean, obviously a male and a woman and a woman together can't have children naturally without science. So they're trying to break all of that to create this, Huxleyan, Julian Huxley created transhumanism, coined the term,
right. What's
to create this transhumanist robotic machine, essentially, that's anti-life.
Yeah, they're going to break the family, and then they're going to break the individual. And what you're going to be left with is basically the vision that Huxley laid out in Brave New World. I think it's going to be far more perverted, but you're going to have classes of beings, basically a service class, a sexual, service class, slaves for the oligarchs' compound, and then the oligarchs who will be the alpha, basically the ones with brains that function. And so reason has been taken from us, and then health has been taken from us, family has been taken from us, and then even individuality is taken.
And then sexuality to top it all off.
Right. Yeah. So, so you're going to see as they move forward, they'll basically just the family, whatever's left of it, and it's getting harder and harder to have any kind of family. That will be a thing of the past. It'll be replaced by government production of beings, and then you'll see that the beings that are being produced will be more and more specialized, and that's what you got. So this isn't metaphorical, guys. People are listening. This is the real program, and so if you want to avoid that, you need to organize and need to understand, how
you need to build family.
And you have to build families, right? That's the first step.
I mean, if you're one of these people that says, "Oh, I don't want children. Oh, why would I bring them into this world?" Et cetera. What you're doing is you're handing it over to the eugenicists, who are saying, "Hey, we want you to end your family tree with you." I mean, you're basically giving the whole prize over to them. So,
and you have to build ethnic pride back up.
Right.
It's interesting if you look at the authoritarian personality that was created by the American Jewish Committee, which the individuals who created it then went on into the Macy Conference and into MK Ultra, many of them. And I a few shows ago brought up the question of, well, what's the actual relationship of the trajectory? What was the outline of the program in point 23 of the authoritarian personality? What is its relationship to MK Ultra? Is it all part of the same thing? And so when you look at that, you have to try to place this process of breaking apart families into this whole structure. And so what are we left with, Jan? We have to try to animate the population to become researchers into their own problems. People stare at the TV sets and the iPhones. You just have to become more animated. You have to do more research. I think we've laid out a lot
and
of
emotionally,
ideas.
and when you discover things, emotionally detach from them. Don't, once you see it and understand it and how it's impacting you, just remove yourself from it. Don't keep feeding the beast, essentially. But, Joe, going back to your question, we only have 5 minutes left here. We can take a while to answer this. But, again, going back to how do we find someone who's not, someone in the brave new world who's not totally damaged, or who was totally damaged and is beginning to wake up out of all of this stuff? What do we do to find someone?
The first thing is look for someone who has the capacity to talk to you in a rational way. Look for discourse that shows the promise of basically building up reason, building up logic, of rhetoric. Look for that. Look for people who you can talk to, and then from there, just remember that you are dealing with someone who's damaged, and so you have.
And we all are.
We all are, and so you have to make commitment. Once you have the relationship, basically you've worked out the details. Hopefully, you have some romantic energy for one another. But once you get that far, you have to make a commitment. Because otherwise, all of these elements, these weaponized anthropology aspects, will just dissolve the relationship. You have to. In other words, everyone is damaged, so all relationship will fail.
Right. Well, and if we keep out all of this outside energy, and if we're aware of it and how they're doing this to us, then we can begin to, stride toward this, this divine marriage between the sacred masculine and feminine again. But we have to be aware of all of these different things, and then, protect ourselves from them. Right.
So just look for someone who's a good conversationalist. And by that, and that will become self-evident. And someone that you actually can have discourse with. Try to go into the difficult subjects, as soon as possible, because you don't want to get to a point where you're basically wanting to make a committed relationship and then have the person, tell you that there are just things of your thought world that she can't accept. So try to have,
or make sure that both people are on the same page and are ready to, if you're conditioned and damaged, are both parties really ready to commit to, the divine marriage or the divine sacred masculine and feminine, or are they, going to be tied into going back into, the brave new world, essentially?
Exactly. And so there's always going to be the temptation. So the commitment has to be just stronger than the temptation. So
absolutely. The couple, going back to what we talked about last week or the week before, the putting the couple first. You have to put your partner first above all else, and then the family, and then protect that and recognize that any outside energy that corrupts that is taking away from the family's aspect to truly build something up.
Right. I mean, make the commitment, and then find using logic, using reason, find the natural flow, the positive energy that comes from a really committed relationship. I mean, look, this is how we are designed to experience life. We're social animals. We are designed to have long-standing relationships. When you're in a committed relationship, it isn't boring. It isn't an absence of pornography. It isn't not to watch Miley Cyrus or whoever the current whore of Babylon concept is. Look, there are things that will take place between the man and the woman that are not just fascinating, but are using the natural energy that are part of what you really want to be as a person. And once you get to that point, then the commitment becomes easier and easier, and you're getting energy right out of the natural relationship, which is what basically with intimacy there'll be a real friendship, and that friendship, particularly when you understand that the outside world is trying to hurt you, becomes something that is enjoyable, is protective of itself, and it's just a better way to live. Believe me, what would you rather have, a long-standing relationship with a sane, loving, committed woman, or 2 blind dates with Miley Cyrus?
And then repeat that every day till the rest of your life. And then when you're old and can't do that behavior anymore, you look back and you say, what do I have? And there's nothing there. Ladies and gentlemen, gnosticmedia.com. Please support the show. Joe Atwill, postflaviana.org. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into CCN. This unique network is dedicated to free and independent media. CCN was created with the belief that information is the common heritage of all beings, which is why our live stream high-definition broadcast is easily accessible and free to view. If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Having produced over 1,000 shows in 2015, which are all archived on YouTube, we look forward to bringing you more groundbreaking, cutting-edge information in 2016. For more information on what is on, please check out our broadcast guide for weekly updates. CCN broadcasts in multiple languages and features some key voices of our challenging times who are all in pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world. CCN belongs to you, the people, and it is up to you all to keep this network on the air. Please contribute to the Network Support Fund or visit the CCN shop. We thank you all for supporting free and independent media.